It's time to start calling him Dark Knight Devries. Indiana basketball picks up 2 more players in the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, and it is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Well, thank you so much for being here. Shout out to all of my everydayers, those of you that come back each and every day, whether you listen, whether you watch, doesn't matter to me. I'm just happy that you're here. We have some football portal updates for Indiana as the first couple of names have entered the transfer portal from the Indiana Hoosiers. We'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. Plus, it's guards. They're everywhere for this Indiana team, and that's because Dark Knight Darren Devries strikes again. In the middle of the night when everybody else is sleeping, Darren Devries is working. He lands 2 more commits in the transfer portal, and we're talking about them today. Jasai Miles from North Florida, the 6'6", 205-pound guard who's got 2 more years of eligibility. We'll talk about him in just a moment. But I want to start with Tayton Conerway, the transfer guard from the Troy Trojans, 6'3", 186 pounds. He has 1 year of eligibility remaining. Mr. Do It All. He is incredible. He did everything for Troy this past season. Listen to some of these stats. Are you ready for this? 14 points for Conerway. 14 points a game, 4.6 rebounds a game, almost 5 assists per game, and he shot it at 47% from the floor. And his three-point percentage is not great. I'll go ahead and tell you that right now. Only 27% from behind the arc, not really his thing. But those 4.5 rebounds, 5 assists per game, and how about this? 3 steals a game. He is a menace on the defensive end of the floor. Is Tayton Conerway, a guy that we've talked about with Indiana, trying to get him in, trying to bring him on to this roster, and he joins what was already a stacked roster with Lamar Wilkerson committing this week. You now get Tayton Conerway as well. I love this guy. I think he is a steady, solid player who steps onto a roster right now in Indiana and instantly competes to be a starting guard. We already know Lamar Wilkerson is going to be your starting 2. But Conerway could be your starting 1. And I know we've had a lot of conversations right about Connor Enright being your starting point guard from DePaul. But you got somebody like this, Tayton Conerway, who played a little bit of both. He played a little 1 and 2 at Troy, but he does a lot of bringing the ball up the floor. He does a lot of facilitating. He creates his own shot. He gets around the defenders. He also picks people's pockets. I mean, I want this guy on the floor. I think he's a better defender than Connor Enright. He's definitely a better scorer than Connor Enright. Nothing against Enright. I like the kid. I do. And I think he's going to be solid for Indiana. But you're talking about a guy who was the conference player of the year on a team that made the NCAA tournament in the Troy Trojans. So I'm going to roll with Tayton Conerway for now, and we'll kind of deal with everything else as we go. But man, this is a huge get for Darren Devries and the Indiana Hoosiers. He could have gone anywhere. I'm just telling you. He could have gone anywhere in the country because of his do-it-all ability. He can score. He can shoot. He can facilitate. He can shoot free throws fairly well. And then you're getting his defensive presence as well, where a lot of his points come from stealing the basketball and getting out in transition. Again, he's not going to be one of your shooters on this team, especially from behind the arc, but that's why you bring in a Lamar Wilkerson. That's why you have Tucker DeVries. That's why you bring those types of guys in. And just to give you an insight, you do have Jasai Miles too, who we're going to talk about in just a second. He's a better shooter than Tayton Conerway is from behind the arc. And so you don't have to worry about that. But you may have just picked up your starting point guard in the transfer portal, and he's one of the best players who is available, I think. Is he to the level of Lamar Wilkerson in terms of pure scorer and shooter? No, but he's better defensively than Lamar Wilkerson is. He's also a little bit more complete than Lamar Wilkerson is, and that's nothing against Lamar. That's just a fact and a bonus for Tayton Conerway, who I think is a great player. So you land him, okay? You land Tayton Conerway from Troy, 6'3", 1 year of eligibility, 14 points per game, 4.5 rebounds a game, 5 assists per game, and shoots it at 47% from the floor. You pair that with what else happened overnight in the middle of the night is Jasai Miles, the North Florida guard, who's 6'6", 205 pounds, and just completed his sophomore season there for North Florida. He brings 3 years, or 2 years, I would say, 2 years at least of eligibility remaining. And did you hear what I said? He's 6'6". Man, he's huge. He's a big guard, and that's what you're looking for in today's college basketball. It's also what they're looking for at the next level as well. And that's probably getting ahead of ourselves just a little bit. But you talk about somebody who was just the scorer for this North Florida team. 15 points a game, 7 rebounds a game, only 2 assists, but shot it at 42.5% from the floor and 33.5% from behind the arc. He is your rebounder and your scorer, and you expect him to do that at 6'6". He joins another loaded room of guards, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Jasai Miles, is he a starter right now? Probably not, but he's a future starter. I believe that wholeheartedly. With having several years of eligibility remaining, surely that was the discussion. Surely that was the pitch. That was the selling point for Darren Devries and this staff, where they said, look, man, we're going to have a loaded room right now of Lamar Wilkerson, now Tayton Conerway, Connor Enright, Tucker DeVries, kind of playing him as a 3, but we're going to have a lot of dudes in here. But you're going to be the future of this program. So come on in, be a part of it. Let's go ahead and learn. Let's get you some minutes, and then you're going to be the future of this program. I think you've offered Tayton Conerway a starting position. I think you're offering Jasai Miles the keys to the program down the road. He's a 6'6" guard, man. What more can you say? He grabs rebounds, he grabs his own miss, and he puts them back, and he scores at a high rate. That's all you need. He's massive, and Indiana is going to use him to their advantage. And I think he's somebody who comes off the bench this year and then eventually becomes a high-level starter, somebody like we've tried to have over the past few seasons, the Trey Galloways, the Xavier Johnsons, those types of players. I think that's what Jasai Miles could be. He's got the size, bigger than those guys, but I also think he's just got more pure scoring ability. And I'm excited about what Jasai Miles, that was a tongue twister, Jasai Miles brings in to this Indiana team, and I love it. Darren DeVries overnight brings in 2 more commits through the transfer portal. Indiana's starting to build a roster here, folks, and right now, it's full of guards. We'll talk about all those guards, how we're going to place them, and how they could be used. It's going to be a fun puzzle to try and figure out. We're talking about that next, right here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. And it's super easy. Posting a job, it's free, it's simple, and within a day, multiple qualified candidates you'll have to choose from. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. We're talking football transfer portal coming up in just a little bit, but there are guards everywhere on this Indiana team, and that seems to be the focus right now for Darren DeVries and this staff. More on that in just a moment. But if you're listening on audio, watching on the YouTube side with video, however you are taking in this podcast, thank you so very much. The support has been incredible. The growth has been even more incredible. And I can't thank you enough for that. And so if you're watching on YouTube, you hit two buttons, the thumbs up and the subscribe button that tells me you're loving the content, you want more, and that you are an everydayer now. That's what that means. If you subscribe, you're an everydayer and you're coming back, and I really appreciate you doing that. Also, leave your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Tayton Conerway and Jasai Miles, 2 more additions for Indiana in the transfer portal. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments from all my audio listeners, whether that is Spotify, Pandora, Apple, Amazon, you name it. Thank you so much for being there and listening on that podcast platform every single day. Really does mean the world to me. And make sure you're sending it out there to all your family and friends. We want them listening to Locked On Hoosiers every single day. So thank you so much for doing all of that and supporting the show. Well, it's a guard-heavy portal cycle right now for Indiana, who, look, Darren Devries had to rebuild an entire roster from scratch, had 0 by the time he landed in Bloomington. Everybody was gone, whether that was graduation, eligibility, or people leaving in the transfer portal, which is expected with a brand new head coach somewhere. You had 0 to work with. And Darren DeVries has gone to work and he's put in the work. And I think it's really starting to pay off. You've had to build a roster, you've had to build a staff, and you've had to make connections all at the same time. And I think he's done a really good job. I do. I think Darren DeVries has done an incredible job with what he was given. Resources are great. We know that. And we understand that he has pretty much anything he needs at his disposal. But man, this is not an easy job that he has done. And you can see the focus. You can see the ideology very, very early and now very often for him and this staff in the transfer portal. They want guards. You bring in a couple of guys on the start, right? You knew you were going to get Tucker DeVries from West Virginia. We understood that that was going to happen. He's probably going to be your 3, but he can play as a big guard if you need him to, right? You bring in Reed Bailey. This is not in order. I'm just kind of going by size here. You go Reed Bailey, who steps in from Davidson. I think he's probably your starting 4. He's a bigger guy. He can shoot, he can score, he can rebound. He's probably going to be your 4. You don't have that center yet. We're still looking for him. But then you start to load up on the guards. You bring in Connor Enright from DePaul. Then you start bringing in guys like Lamar Wilkerson from Sam Houston, who I think is the best guard in the transfer portal, who will now be an Indiana Hoosier. Then you turn around and bring in Jasai Miles from North Florida, and you bring in Tayton Conerway from Troy, all-conference player on an NCAA tournament team. Yeah, you're really starting to load this thing up. And now we're to the point where you can have legitimate conversations and debates, I think, since it is middle of April. Who is your starting 5? What is your starting guard situation look like? Who comes off the bench first? Who's the 6th man? Who's the 7th man? Who switches for who? What other sorts of rotations could you run with this crew? And folks, that's a good problem to have. That's a really good problem to have, because you could sit here, and we will for the next several weeks, make arguments for why Connor Enright should be your starting guard. I think he is smart. I think he is consistent. I think he knows what Darren DeVries wants to run, and I think he is a true point guard. You also can make an argument for Tayton Conerway, who is a better scorer, a little bit better defender, bigger, faster, stronger than Connor Enright, and has proven it on the biggest stage. Then you start looking at your shooting guard spot. Okay, do you start Jasai Miles, who's 6'6", average 15 points a game, and also gets 7 rebounds a game? That's pretty solid. Or do you go with Lamar Wilkerson, who's a top 15 scorer from a year ago, shoots it at 44% from 3, is it an absolute walking bucket? You have arguments to make. You have possibilities. You have options now if you are this Indiana team. And don't forget Trent Sisley, your top 75 freshman, who's going to be stepping in to this roster as well. And guess what? Indiana may not be done. Indiana may not be done, and you now have options in your guard room. And man, this is exciting. This is really, really exciting. And I know there's going to be some fans out there, and rightfully so. I'm just jumping out ahead of this. There's going to be some fans that are out there that say, well, Jacob, we got excited last year about Indiana's transfer portal guard situation, right? You brought in Cannon Carlisle, and you brought in Miles Rice, who I thought were really good. I did. I thought were really, really good. Two Pac-12, former Pac-12 RIP, former Pac-12 Power 5 guards who were stepping in, who I thought was going to be really, really good. I thought Cannon Carlisle was more of your anchor in a way, more of your consistent, more of your defender, more of your kind of just steady guard. I thought Miles Rice was going to be your scorer. I thought he was going to be your shooter. I thought he was going to be your bucket getter. And man, that just didn't happen. It just didn't happen at all. And Trey Galloway was inconsistent last year. And of course, you lose Xavier Johnson. And look, Anthony Leal ended up being legit. And talking about Johnson from the previous year, of course. And Anthony Leal ended up being one of your better guards a year ago. Like you swung and missed in the transfer portal. But you also had a head coach that wasn't really getting the job done. And now here we are. That entire team has been flushed out. That's gone. That does not exist anymore. And so now if you're Indiana, you should have confidence, of Indiana fans rather. You should have confidence in Darren Devries for what he did at West Virginia, what he did at Drake, and what he is expected to do at Indiana. And let's just be real here for a second. These guys he's getting in the portal right now are different than what Indiana's had in the past. Indiana has not had a Lamar Wilkerson on this team in quite some time. Indiana has not had a legitimate 6'6" sophomore guard like Jasai Miles step into this team as a junior right now. Indiana has not had guys like Tayton Conerway step on this floor who are all conference players and make an immediate impact. That just hasn't happened here. Tucker DeVries, one of the best shooters in the country, you have him. Also, Lamar Wilkerson, again, one of the best shooters in the country. Darren DeVries said, I want to push the basketball. I want to shoot the basketball. You're going to do that with this squad. You're going to do that with this team, man. They are going to be fast. They're going to be exciting. They're going to be high flying, high shooting, high scoring. It's going to be a lot of fun. But you start to talk about that and you think about teams like in Alabama in the SEC, who that's all they do is run and gun and shoot a bunch of threes. This team's going to play defense too. You've got some pests, some menaces on the defensive end of the floor, which I think will help Indiana really stay grounded this season, because look, you're going to have a jumble of 1-year guys and 2-year guys and 4-year guys possibly, right? You have a mixture right now of different eligibilities, which can be difficult. It can be difficult. And look, all these guys have to mesh. They all have to gel. But I think Darren DeVries and this staff have gone about it a certain way, as a lot of coaches do. I'm not saying this is a new idea that they've just created, but they're going after specific guys who have specific goals, specific mindsets, and possibly specific personality traits as well, because you want all these guys to mesh. They have rarely played with each other before, and you're building a brand new team from scratch where these guys have played at all different places with all different players, with all different coaches. And now it's all got to come together right now. And that's the challenge through the summer and as we get closer to the season. But the challenge right now is to complete this roster. And Darren DeVries is doing that. He did that with Jasai Miles from North Florida. He did it with Tayton Conerway from Troy. Overnight, Indiana gets 2 more guards from the transfer portal. And man, if you can't tell, I'm excited for them, and you should be as well. All right, coming up here, our final segment on Locked On Hoosiers, we will flip to the football side of things, as Hoosiers have seen a couple of names enter the portal already. We'll talk about that, plus where Indiana could be going as that portal window is wide open. We'll talk about that coming up next in our final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting super easy. Whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, FanDuel has it all. And from 3-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. And plus, once the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets in the same game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 bonus and bonus bets today. That's at FanDuel.com. Final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you so much again for being here, making this your go-to spot, your first listen or first watch every single day. And what's crazy is right now in this calendar that we're in the middle of April, you've got the basketball portal wide open, and you've also got the football portal wide open. This 10-day portal window for college football is officially open, and we expected Indiana to be active with Kurt Signetti and the guys, but maybe not overly active, and haven't had any additions as of right now, but you have had a few subtractions. And one that I think hurts a couple others that aren't as big of a deal. You've had 2 on the offensive side and 2 on the defensive side. We'll talk about the defensive side very quickly. Robbie Harrison, a defensive tackle who was at Indiana for a couple of years, didn't really do a whole lot. He will transfer somewhere with 2 years of eligibility. And then Josh Philliston, the DB, he transferred. And look, he was an OG James Madison guy, followed Signetti here, had some nasty injuries, couldn't really get out of his own way, unfortunately, but he's got a ton of years of eligibility remaining. And so he's going to transfer as well. And then on the offensive side, we'll start with Sam West, the tight end. And this is your 3rd tight end now that you've lost if you're Indiana, but you've brought guys in, including a guy that, if you haven't been able to tell, I really like, and Holden Stays from Tennessee. I like him a lot. And so, yes, it sucks to lose Sam West, but I think you've replaced him just fine, and you're going to be okay. Could Indiana afford to get another one? Sure. And they very well could in the transfer portal. But you lose Sam West. And then Austin Barrett, the offensive lineman who will leave with a few years of eligibility remaining. Someone who was supposed to be good. And I think early on, that was the expectation, but then Indiana went and got some dudes in the transfer portal. And I also think some of your younger guys have stepped up and have become very reliable as well. And so, do I like losing Austin Barrett? No, I don't like losing offensive linemen in general. I think it's a tough thing to replace. It's tough to find good quality ones, but somebody's going to pick him up, and I think he's going to be very, very good. And so you lose 2 on the offensive side, a tight end and an offensive lineman. You lose 2 on the defensive side, a D tackle and a defensive back. And so that brings up the question, okay, where does Indiana go? Will they try to replace those guys in particular? Are they trying to go to a specific position in particular? Where will Indiana go? We've talked about this a little bit as the portal window approached and now that it is officially open. And I've talked about this narrative that Indiana is in a really good spot because you can afford to lose these 4 and more will leave. Just be ready for that. There will be some more names that enter, but Indiana is pretty much going for depth. I mean, you're pretty much going to fill depth at this point. Yeah, you need a starting slot receiver. Sure, you could always use more offensive linemen and defensive linemen, maybe some more guys in the secondary, but I think another starting linebacker, I think, is where you are right now. I think you need a starting slot receiver and you need a starting linebacker to stand on the other side of Aiden Fisher. But other than that, you're strictly getting depth pieces, people that you think can be effective, can be impactful, can give you some quality snaps, whether it's on the offensive line or whether it is, I don't know, a tight end or whatever the case may be. You are in a really, really good spot if you're Kurt Signetti right now, because you feel good about where your team is. You feel good about your roster. You did such a good job in the winter portal window, in the December portal window, where you don't have to rely on the spring window. And I think this is the new strat. I think this is the new strategy for high-level college football programs is, man, we're tired of relying on the portal in April because I hate to say it like this, but if you're leaving in April, are you going to be good enough to play somewhere big time come fall? Not always that way, but that seems to be the narrative, right? Is, well, you're leaving somewhere right now in the spring, at the end of the spring, because you probably weren't going to get the playing time, or if you're Nico Iamaleava, you weren't going to get paid $4 million, which is absurd in its own right. But if you're leaving right now, you probably weren't going to be playing at your previous school. So what makes you good enough to play here? And I think that has to be the mindset. And if you're Indiana, if you can dominate the December window where guys leave for better opportunities or leave for more money or whatever the case may be, you have better options in December than you do in April. I think that's just clear as day right now. And Indiana took advantage of that. And I think you're going to see that here in the spring window. So will Indiana get some guys? Yeah, they will, but it won't be anything crazy. I don't think. Now, they could blow us away and they could surprise us. I just don't think you're going to see anything groundbreaking, just headline type of news in terms of a transfer portal edition for the football team, but you never know. And maybe they will. Maybe they will surprise us, but you're in a spot where you really just need depth. You need only a couple of starters, and I think Indiana is in a really, really good spot. You lose these 4, but I think you're going to be just fine here in the spring portal window. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers, man. Thank you so much for being here. Cannot stress enough how much I appreciate you, whether you listen on audio or or watch us on YouTube, however you take in this show and this podcast every day. Thank you so, so much, okay? We are back tomorrow, Hoosier fans, to wrap up the week. So until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.